But Tim, here's my question. I hope it's not too personal. Of course, you can answer it or not, but I am curious, who is this person in Kaneohe?
Oh, his name is Narahari Das. I call him Maharaj. Maharaj means, Maha means great. Raj is king. It's something in Indian spiritual traditions of honoring someone. So I call him Narahari Maharaj. And he is a longtime Krishna devotee, teacher, and he is a good friend, and he is someone with whom I can explore and learn. And so, yeah, let me just mix this up. Now that we're recording, I'll reveal even more about myself. But it's all right. I mean, I've shared this stuff with I'm on the Unity Worldwide Ministry Board. I've shared some of this with the board. I've shared it with congregations. So I'm a Christian. I am a Unity minister who is very committed to oneness and believes strongly in the working of principle. And I'm also a personalist. So my experience of God is also a very personal love relationship, like you read about in Song of Solomon. It's a love relationship. And so I am also a Krishna devotee. These beads you see around my neck are Tulsi beads. Some people think, oh, you're Hawaiian, you got puka shells, but they're Tulsi beads, and it comes from India, and these never come off. And so, and I was talking with Reverend Gio the other day at Morning Brew, which is, Gio has now become one of my offices here in Kailua, and I welcome you all from Kailua. I'm living on the windward side, and so I was explaining with Reverend Gio that yes, I fully embrace the impersonal, the principle aspect that Unity teaches, and I'm also a personalist where I have this intimate love relationship with God. And so anyway, that's a little bit my guru and I share. We're in a Sangha weekly. Our Sangha meets, and then sometimes I spend some time with him and we just go very, very deep. So thanks for asking.
Thank you, Tim. I know Leslie's next.
Yeah, thank you. Rev. Tim, I just am curious if you will share with us which ashrams in India you stayed in.
Well, okay, so that was an adventure. Okay, so the second pilgrimage, which was about 6 years ago, and I look forward to going back again. In fact, I sort of have that built into my contract. But I stayed at the what's called the MVT ashram. It is the ashram right outside of the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan. It's a nice ashram. Beautiful landscaping. It's simple, and yet, it has beds. They may not be the most comfortable. They have rooms. They may not be the biggest. They have showers. It may not have hot water. And they definitely have monkeys. Monkeys are all but it's a beautiful place. And on that pilgrimage, I also stayed at an ashram of Ananda Mai Ma. If any of you have ever heard of Ananda Mai Ma was a person who very much taught that we're not the body, and taught a non-dual way of looking at life. And so I stayed at one of her ashrams in Indore, which has a school for the poorest of the poor. And they clothe, feed, school, lodge children for free, poorest of the poor. And so I worked with those children, and in Indore, and then I went to a jungle remote island, and I didn't know anybody at any of these places before my trip. I'm on my own, and some of it didn't work out the way I planned, but it was even better than the way I planned. And I didn't know anybody where I was going. So I was at a jungle island in the holy Narmada River. And this island is called Omkareshwar. Omkareshwar is a Shaivite community. And so Shiva temples and the Narmada River, if you've ever seen Shiva Lingam, they're these round stones. Actually, we're still unpacking. But here is a small Shiva Lingam, okay? And so these come from rolling on the bottom of the Narmada River. And I stayed there, and those were much more primitive conditions. And again, I was working with youth. They have about 300 of the poorest of the poor children that they work with. So I was working with children there. And and then the first pilgrimage, so these are all ashrams. And the first pilgrimage, I stayed at numerous sites. One of them was Auroville. Auroville is spelled Auroville. If any of you have ever heard of Sri Aurobindo, Sri Aurobindo was a close influence of Ernest Holmes, who began religious science and centers for spiritual living. And at the same time that Charles Fillmore, co-founder of the Unity Movement, was developing a system of the 12 powers, without any communication or knowledge of each other that I'm aware of, on the opposite side of the planet in India, Sri Aurobindo was working on a system of 12 powers. And Auroville is this intentional, spiritual, international community of about 44 different nationalities that have come together to work together collaboratively. They have their own school system. They have it's a self-sustaining community. Look it up online, Auroville, AURO. And they have this, imagine a golf ball that is gold plated and 6.5 stories high.
Good.
That is the center of Auroville, and that is their meditation center. And you go inside it and you feel like you're inside a spaceship. It's white and pristine, and you go up into their concentration room, their meditation room. It has 12 white pillars for their 12 power. And this is called the Matra Mandir. And it sits in this lotus flower that has 12 petals. And each of those petals is a room you can go into to hear special music, have certain colors, experience and embody that particular one of the 12 powers. they developed this at the same time Fillmore was doing it on opposite ends of the planet. So that
Yeah.
was one of the ashrams we stayed at as well. So yeah, thanks, Leslie.
That's cool. I would love to know more about that that line of study. Maybe we
Oh,
could
yeah,
get some information about that and send it out to everyone in the class. So I'm going to go back to the questions that were sent to us. And even though these next sets of questions have already been covered in our reading, I think it's something that we can review and consider over and over again, because they're very important questions. The first question reads, let's see, am I sharing my screen?
yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's not telling me that I'm sharing my screen. It's a bit odd here, but there's 3 dots right next to each other. Ah, here we go.
Yeah.
So, Carolyn, would you read those 3 questions together? Carolyn, would you unmute and then read those 3 questions together? Thank you.
Oops. Is Hinduism the only major religion that has more than one deity? And why more than one deity? And the next question is, do they have organized services and celebrations? And what are they?
Thank you. Those are great questions. And, you know, there's all kinds of different spiritual systems around the world. Some of them may present more than one deity, but I want to speak into that just a little bit. In what is called Hinduism, there's many varieties of Hinduism. It's not all one thing, but there's common threads that are shared in different aspects of Hinduism. And one of the things that people notice is that, you know, they may have millions of deities, millions. And yet, if you talk with many Hindu people, not all of them, but many of them know that there's only one presence, there's only one power, there's only one God, but these are all different manifestations and ways in which God has shown up. So when we look at it, when I say we, people in the West look at it, it's like, oh my goodness, how do you keep track of all these different deities? But if one realizes that when you get to the foundation of it, at least for many people who would be considered Hindu, at the foundation of it is a belief that there's one presence, one power, one God, one life. And so now in some traditions, one, you know, people will focus on Krishna as being the one power, one presence, or they may say Vishnu, or say that those are the same. You know, there are different ways of viewing this. I'm trying to remember the rest of the question, but you also asked if there were special celebrations. Oh, thank you, Reverend Gio. Oh, why more than one deity? And do they have organized services and celebration? So, there are many faces to God. Even as I look at this room, the Zoom room, we are all the face of God.
Right. Yeah.
We all have different faces, We are all different individualizations of that one power, that one presence. Why don't we all look exactly the same? Why don't we all show up the same? If there's only one power and one presence, and that's our first principle in unity. And our second principle is that means that presence is showing up as us. Why do we look different? Well, I see it as we're all expressing different aspects, different individualized expressions of that which is God. And so, why more than one deity? Again, that's many ways of showing that one presence, that one power. And yeah, there's a lot of celebrations. Holy smoly. You could have festivals every day in Hinduism, depending on what branch you are following or what, like the branch that I'm in are called Vaishnavas, Gaudiya Vaishnavism. You don't have to remember that, but like every day there's something, and then every week or so there's some big celebration, the appearance day of Radha. Radha is the feminine divine, the consort of Krishna. There's the appearance day of Balaram, the brother of Krishna, and you get off into others like the appearance day of Ganesh, the appearance day of Shiva, the disappearance day of a special guru. There's all kinds. Recently, trying to remember what day it was, but late in August, we had the appearance day or birthday of Krishna, which is also called Janmashtami. And so I got to celebrate that here at a temple in Honolulu. And that celebration goes until 1:30 in the morning. It started at 5 o'clock in the evening and goes till 1:30 in the morning. So if anybody wonders if an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and a half church service might be too long, you might find some of these really stretching you, because they could go for hours. The RT, with the fire, and then on Janmashtami or on some other very special festival, we will have an altar set up, and let's say it's Krishna, so you'll have Radha and Krishna up there, and you're standing in a line, and you're each coming up and bathing them. You bathe them in milk, you bathe them in honey, you bathe them in fruit juice, and it's all going into this tray, which has this drain in it, and this drain goes down to this container underneath the altar. And so there's this big container filled with, so it's a combination of like milk, fruit juice, honey, different things. And then you all drink it together at your meal that evening. So you're all partaking of this offering. You're all partaking of Krishna. And so it's there's a lot of celebrations. You've probably heard of Holi, which is spelled Holi.
Yeah, with the flowers.
What's that?
With the crushed flowers.
It's like all these bright colors. And
Right.
if you look it up online, go to Spanish Fork, Utah, and look up Holi, Holi, Spanish Fork, Utah. It's a Krishna temple, but they'll have like 10 or 20,000 or more people at this festival where they're all throwing bright red and blue
Right.
and green and yellow colorings on each other. And I've been in those festivals. And it's a way, it's a day of celebrating the victory of light over darkness, the victory of truth over illusion. And so there's all kinds of festivals. So if you're into festivals, I highly recommend Hinduism because there's no shortage of them.
It's a good time.
So I'd like to comment on this question and something that's occurred to me. And the Hindus really know how to party. I mean, they really know how to
Yes.
celebrate. There's a God that takes place every single day of the year to celebrate. And you know what's interesting about the Gospel according to John, most of us who have lived with embedded Christian theology, the first miracle according to the Gospel of John is that Jesus turned the water into wine. He was basically saying, let's party, let's celebrate, let's enjoy life. So, you know, the interesting thing is that in Christianity, we have the same thing, but it really comes down to the fact that the Hindus really know how to party.
There's dancing, eating, singing, fellowship. Yeah, you're right.
Awesome.
You're right.
So anyone else have a question from in the room? Raise your hand or wave up or speak up, whichever works.
Looks like
Jim?
Jim does.
Yes.
Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Jim.
About 8 or 9 years ago at Unity Church, our former minister, Reverend Sky St. John, did an extensive sermon on Diwali, which he described as one of the greatest of the Hindu. And could you explain a little bit about that?
Yes. Yeah, Diwali, spelled Diwali, or
Right.
sometimes you'll see variant spellings, and sometimes the W, just like with Hawaii, sometimes the W is pronounced with a V sound, like Diwali. So Diwali is the festival of lights. And I remember when I was here before at Unity of Hawaii, we celebrated Diwali one Sunday. Have had an Indian member who assisted with that. Diwali is a time of, again, really celebrating the practice of light. And Diwali, as I remember, occurs in a special time of the year, which is also called Kartik. And Kartik is like this month-long celebration because a day is not long enough to celebrate traditions. You celebrate for a month. So there's lots of things, but Diwali for many is like the climax, the culmination of this particular celebration. And it's a time of celebrating the light, celebrating the light that is in each one of us. Sometimes in the celebration of Diwali, there is special recognition of Lakshmi. Lakshmi is called the goddess of fortune. Lakshmi is like, okay, let's say you're a unity person that wanted to cross over into Hinduism a little bit, and you're studying about prosperity. You might want to get a picture of Lakshmi. Lakshmi is pictured with coins dripping from one hand. Lakshmi is this, again, divine feminine. And so Lakshmi, Radha, Sita, these are all expressions of the same, they're the same, but they show up in different ways. And so Diwali is a time of celebrating Lakshmi. For some, it's also a time of celebrating Durga. Have any of you heard of Durga? Durga is an interesting one. Durga is often pictured maybe riding on a horse or some animal, and maybe an elephant or whatever. She'll have like 10 arms, and she has weapons in each arm, and heads might be flying off, and it's like, whoa, who? and so,
That's
but
my kind of woman.
yeah, Durga is this manifestation of God, this face of God that very much loves and supports those who are trying to do right, and loves those who are misbehaving, loves those who are being destructive and being a pain in the rear. But Durga doesn't put up with that either. Durga straightens stuff out. And in these traditions, God is seen, well, kind of like in the Hebrew scriptures, where there was a great flood because God said, I'm tired of how people are living here. I'm going to wipe this out. That these people, I just can't put up with them anymore. All right. So Durga is a little bit like that. Like, hey, you're not going to be able to mistreat the earth forever. Hey, you're not going to be able to mistreat each other forever. There's going to be some straightening out that's going to occur. We're going to balance this out. And so Durga is one of those who does that. So she's often pictured as this kind of warrior. So again, that's part of Diwali, of celebrating the light and knowing, and in unity, I see it so closely aligned with unity, knowing that there is truly only one power and one presence, and that presence is living as us. And so these things that we look at that look so bad and sound so bad, we also know that this truth living as us, this truth is absolute, that we are bringing light into the world. We're making a positive difference in the world. So that's kind of the theme of Diwali. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. So we're going to bop back over to the questions here. And Ed, I think this is your question.
Yeah, right. That's mine. Based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, Jesus is one of the gurus and Ananda's on the Ananda path of self-realization. Paramahansa Yogananda stated that in the divine plan, Jesus Christ is responsible for the evolution of the West and Babaji for that of the East. Would you like to comment on any of these teachings on the Ananda path of self-realization, if you know of them? And him, Yogananda.
That's a very cool question. Thank you, Ed. My favorite place in Northern California, and David, I know that you came recently from Northern California as well. My favorite place there that I found that I long to go back to is Ananda Village. Ananda Village is close to Nevada City, California, and not too far from the Lake Tahoe area. So you're in the mountains. Are you familiar with it, Ed?
My friend Reverend James in Dallas took a sabbatical. He went there for 2 weeks.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so wow. If you're ever looking for a place to go on retreat, this is one place you might consider, is Ananda Village. Some of you know Reverend Denise Schilling, who was here at Unity Church of Hawaii. It's one of the places she goes for silent retreat. And it's a Yogananda self-realization style of place. I I absolutely resonate with knowing, at least for myself, that Jesus was one of these very, very, and I don't have an issue with calling Jesus God's son. I see all of us as God's children, and Scripture states that we're all children of God. So, but I see Jesus as this one who really came to establish what Yogananda is talking about, this connection and knowingness of this presence of God. Jesus, his life, his teachings emulate that. They show that. To me, they show what is called the bhakti path, the path of service and loving devotion and experiencing this connection with the divine. And that when Jesus said, when you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And he didn't seem to just reserve that for himself, because he went on to say in John chapter 14, greater things will you do. I mean, he didn't say, hey, I'm all that, too bad for all you. In Matthew chapter 5, he said, you are the light of the world. That's what he emphasized. So, yeah, and I understand on a very spiritual level that devotion to Babaji. Yogananda called Babaji. Have you all read the autobiography of a yogi by
Yes.
Yogananda?
Yeah.
He talks about the Christ of the East, which he refers to as Babaji. And Babaji is this wonderful spiritual presence, not was, is this wonderful spiritual presence that is also working to establish what I would call Christ consciousness or divine consciousness, or knowing this oneness, this presence with God. So yeah, Ed, that's definitely something that is an influence in my life and has spoken to my heart. And Babaji for me is not just a concept. Babaji is how do I say this? I guess I'll just say it. So like I have a team, and Babaji's on the team. So anyway, yeah. So thank you for that. And as some of you may or may not know, Self-Realization Fellowship and that path of Ananda is very much in line with New Thought teaching. But it's like I went to the Sunday service at Ananda Village, and it was like a cross between a church service and a Hindu chanting and use of the light and opening the third eye. And some people have described, one historian described the unity movement as Christianized Hinduism.
Wow.
That Fillmore, and this may be one of the later questions, but Fillmore was very much had a number of influences, Kabbalah, and influenced by spiritualism, and another very strong influence was Hinduism, and that's true with Ernest Holmes as well. So, to call unity Christianized Hinduism, I think it's like we have Jesus and we have scriptures, and yet when you look at it, it's really, really very much in alignment with much of what is taught in various lines of Hinduism. So I don't think and Paul John Roach in his book is pointing out some of these connections that we have a lot. We have a lot in common with what we would call Hinduism, a lot. Now, what we don't have as much are the rituals and the images and the smells and the flavors. And I'm kind of like, we can have some of that. There's nothing that unity.
We should.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to say that from the platform sometime soon.
Yes, good.
Welcome to Unity Windward. We are Christianized Hinduism.
I have said it a few times. I've said
Okay.
it a few times.
Cool.
Yeah.
Kaywood, you had something you wanted to say?
I have a quick anecdote about Yogananda that I heard related by Roy Eugene Davis, who was one of his disciples.
Right.
And another disciple came to Yogananda about an older Christian couple who had been following Yogananda, but felt like with their Christian background, they just couldn't give up their focus on Christianity. And Yogananda supposedly said, just send them to Unity. They teach practically the same thing we do.
Yeah, I can believe that. I can believe that he said that because it's so true.
Very cool.
And at least in my connection with Self-Realization Fellowship, and I went to one of their large places in Delhi in India, and on their altar they have Yogananda there. They have Jesus, they have Krishna, they have Babaji, they have Yogananda's spiritual lineage, and belief in Jesus and following Jesus is not a dichotomy in that system or in Unity or in Hinduism. Like a lot of people in Hinduism have a deep regard for Jesus, but a lot of people in Hinduism have a deep distrust of Christianity
Right.
because of missionaries who came over and tried to make them wrong, call them idol worshipers, that they are blinded by Satan, So this unfortunate thing happened, which also happened here in Hawaii, of squashing Hawaiian beliefs, squashing Hawaiian language and culture in the name of Christianity. So like Gandhi said something like this, because Gandhi regularly studied the Bhagavad Gita. He also regularly studied the teachings and life of Jesus. And I've been a student of Gandhi a long time. Gandhi said, I love Jesus, but it's you Christians I don't understand.
Yeah.
So let's take another question or another comment right here in the Zoom room. Anyone raise your hand or wave or? Jim, you have another question?
I had a comment, and I've always believed this probably since elementary school, but there is a big difference between Jesus and Christianity, and that's very unfortunate. And I appreciate Unity trying to undo all that.
I'd love to find a way to bridge the gap, most definitely. Get closer to
Right.
the teachings of Jesus rather than the religion that was built up around that. Paula, please go ahead. Thank you for raising your hand.
Thanks, Gio. Well, I feel like this is a little bit of a coming out party for me because I've had like 5 gurus. I love them all. I've got these practices. I go in and out of them pretty constantly. But I'm kind of a connoisseur of the gurus because there's so many of them. And the few of them, maybe 6 or 7, where I feel really personally connected, have totally helped me transform and feel safe on this planet with everybody.
Wow.
It's kind of like, okay, well, no matter what's going on in the news and, this, that, and the other, there is a reservoir or a force of God that is far greater than all of our fears and concerns that we all, collect. And so thank you, Tim and Gio. And
Yeah.
I just really love Jesus. But like you said, I didn't experience the Holy Spirit until I started doing yoga with the breath. And then I went, oh man, this is what they mean. This is a Holy Spirit. It's moving me just by the deep breathing and getting into this whole piece. And it was so, non-textual. It was like, you don't have to believe it. You get to experience it.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you. And Paula, you probably know this, but I don't know if everyone knows this. In the Hebrew scriptures, ruach is the word for breath. It's also the word for spirit. So when they're talking about spirit or talking about breath, it's the same word.
Yeah.
And in the Christian scriptures, it's pneuma, from which we get the word pneumonia, or pneumatic. So like it means breath. It also means spirit. And so it's interesting to me in Hinduism, for centuries, for thousands of years, it's been practiced prana, working with the breath and seeing this connection of breath and spirit. Thank you for bringing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so there is something in the chat, but I've also got it on the display. And Sue, if you would be willing to read that, that would be super groovy. Oh, it's right down here.
Okay, this is for Reverend Tim. Can you all hear me? I've been having audio problems lately. That's why I put it in the chat
Yes,
room,
we can
just
hear
in
you.
case. Yes, given your rich background and spiritual experiences through in Hinduism, what is your vision for your unity ministry here in Hawaii?
Ah,
That was a nice light little question, huh?
I love that question. And
Just
of course,
curious.
thank you, Sue. Good to see you. And of course, my vision for Unity Church of Hawaii it is very, very large and expansive, and it's also collaborative because I want it to work in concert and collaboration with the vision that the board, the congregation all have, because obviously we're all in this together. I can't just paddle the boat in one way when everyone else is paddling the other. But in terms of how I'm influenced or directed or what that experience with Hinduism, as we call it, because again, that's a very broad term that brings together a lot of different paths. How does that inform my vision and ministry here at Unity Church of Hawaii? Obviously, it's integral to who I am, and it's integral to how I practice unity. So it comes out in my messages, whether people know it's coming out or not. It comes out in my messages because I will sometimes explain some concepts that are also informed by my understanding from these Eastern sources, but very much in alignment with unity, and I think help speak to our unity teachings, because again, our unity teachings in some ways came from this. So it's definitely a personal influence and informs my practice of ministry. Now, it's not like, okay, I'm going to establish that we're going to celebrate 52 festivals a year at Unity Church of Hawaii. That that'd probably be a little too much. But I think that there could be some recognition given occasionally during the year, not only to Hinduism, but also Islam or Buddhism or other things, some special festivals or teachings throughout the year that connect with our unity teachings that help expand on them. And your question, Sue, is one that's going to stick with me. All of these questions are going to stick with me, but yours is one that is going to require some reflection and thought on my part, because sometimes I would like to introduce, wouldn't need to be a Hindu chant, but like once in a while in a Sunday service, I would like a chanting experience. Now, I don't know if Unity Church of Hawaii how they would feel comfortable with that or not, but sometimes we use some chanting experiences in New Thought churches, like Ricky Byers has songs that are a chant. Karen Drucker has songs that are a chant. And I see power in chant, and that's part of that Hindu or, influence, the power of chanting. I also see that unity at times, and I like what you said, Reverend Gio, that we're a mystical tradition.
Yeah.
At times, unity has turned into a very cerebral tradition where we like to be very much in our head and talk about principles and so forth, but have a harder time connecting with heart. And I find that there's great power in ritual to help us center into these truths. So at some of the unity churches I've been at, at the beginning of the year, help me out here, the fire ceremony where we put
The burning bull.
Burning bull, thank you. So like a lot of people in unity really gravitate to the burning bowl ceremony because they're able to practice a unity principle of letting go and embracing something new, God letters or the white stone ceremony. They love it that we have a ritual. And so rituals can be used in a way that really help us to go more deeply into these transformative beliefs and practices. And that's something that's very much influenced by my experience, that we don't need to throw out ritual. We don't need to throw out some of these fun things that can help us to go more deeply. But thank you, Sue. And I'm going to think about that more. And I envision sometime in the future, you and me talking about that more deeply.
You got it.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Oh, David, please go ahead.
Yes, Reverend Tim, considering your tremendous experience and knowledge of Hinduism, would you consider putting on a course on the similarities and differences between the two? And I would definitely attend. This is a fascinating discussion. I was fortunate enough to actually visit India for a residency program, but that wasn't a spiritual, it was a professional trip. But I have a real feeling for Hinduism and the people that I met there. It was just wonderful.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Mm.
I would absolutely love to do that. So thanks for that invitation or suggestion or idea. I think that's a great idea.
So let's all keep our eyes and ears open for when that takes place. I'm sure it will be soon.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And we have people on island that I could pull into that discussion who can speak probably from different aspects.
That'd be great.
That would be wonderful. We have people from Texas and Missouri and Georgia and Washington, D.C. There's people from all over the world here. So I hope that you're planning on doing that hybrid or on Zoom or something to that effect. And even if it's not, I'm sure it will make a difference in the vibration of the planet.
Mhm.
Thank you for that, Dave.
Yeah, I have a question.
Please ask, Penny.
I wonder what his different, what do you think the difference is between spirituality and spiritualism? And do they both apply to Hinduism?
Okay, so spirituality. First of all, I make some distinction between. I see a nuance of difference between spirituality and religion. Religion can sometimes be an invention by people, primarily men, to create a patriarchal system by which to control people through shame, fear, and guilt. Boy, that didn't sound judgmental at all, did it?
That's
I'm
religion
not standing in
or
line for that
spiritual?
one. Not signing up for that.
It's like, geez, Tim, could you soften that a little bit? Now, religion can be a great avenue. And of course, Islam, Hinduism, Christianity, these are great religious paths. But in those paths, I see spirituality as being that where a person is taking that to an individual level, where they're taking it out into the world. It's not so much about dogma, it's about real transformation, it's about real relationship. So as I've studied different traditions, I've noticed I gravitate to the mystical aspect of it. You know, in studying Judaism for 5.5 years, I was in the Hebraic College of Judaism, and I gravitated to Kabbalah. I studied Kabbalah, which is the mystical aspect of Judaism. And Islam, I studied Sufism, which is the mystical aspect of Islam, you know. So these mystical traditions are very much about what I would consider, not that the others are not, but how do I want to put this? Spirituality is really living it from a place of coming from coherence with ourselves, coherence with others, coming from a place of practicing the presence rather than a punitive control system. In the integral ministry program, we're studying about predict and control. On one hand, where we try to predict and control everything, whereas on the other hand, you have being open to emergence, open to what wants to happen. I see spirituality as being much more open to what wants to happen rather than trying to predict and control everything. And that sometimes runs counter to our ego. I'm not putting down the ego, but the ego wants to know everything, wants to be able to predict everything, wants to be able to control everything. The ego wants to know. And as one spiritual teacher told me, that the ego wants to know, but it's typically the last to know. And so
I don't think my question came through
My
clearly.
comment about spirituality. Spiritualism is something different. Yes, you want to say something, and I was going to address spiritualism now, but did you want to say something else, Penny?
Oh, well, go ahead. I thought maybe you didn't hear my question correctly, but
I
now,
did. I
okay.
was addressing the first part of it because it's two separate questions. Spirituality and spiritualism. Spiritualism typically is referring to a type of belief or type of practice. Spiritualism takes many forms. The Fillmores were definitely influenced very much by spiritualism, and if any of you have studied spiritualism, theosophy, Madame Blavatsky, that type of material, it's the spiritualism is about knowing that there's much more to life than what we see on the outside, that material life is just one aspect, that spiritualism uncovered this vast array of, oh, we can connect and talk with those who have passed on before us. We can talk with other entities. We can, and that kind of goes off in the channeling and so forth. We can, so spiritualism cracked open the egg of materialism that wanted to just stick to, we can only believe what we can prove mathematically and see and touch. Spiritualism opened that up. So spiritualism and spirituality are kind of two, I wouldn't say they're different things, but they don't mean exactly the same thing. Spirituality is how I'm practicing my spiritual beliefs. Spiritualism is a particular practice engaging with unseen entities, unseen forces. Does that address, and certainly in Hinduism, there's a strong spiritualist type component in a lot of it.
Yeah.
So
What confused me was when you were talking about religion, because I don't think spirituality or spiritualism, either one, necessarily has to be associated with a religion.
Correct. Then
Yes.
that's what I was saying. That's
Okay.
what I was saying. I
We're
was
creating
trying
a
to
new
make
world
it
in that
clear.
respect. And that's a pretty
Yeah.
wonderful thing. I'd love to note that we're having this recurring theme in that we're talking about bringing our head into our heart and bringing our heart into our head. It's almost as if there's a theme of unity within our lives. I'm hoping that perhaps we can embody that and experience that. We are getting close to out of time. It's 11:25 here on the island of Oahu. I want to say a very special thank you to Rev Tim for being our special guest this morning.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
definitely.
you. I hope it was helpful. It was such a joy for me to have this time to share with you. Thank you for the invitation, Reverend Gio.
Yes.
And it's been a delight to interact with all of you. Thank you.
Awesome. Wonderful. I do want to point out that I put something in the chat so that you can go to the Unity Windward website, should you choose to do so, and make a love offering donation. And in the spirit that we are all in this together, I would like for you to consider, if you'd like to make a love offering to Unity Church of Hawaii, you can go to their website as well and make a donation there. In whatever way you choose to offer love in your life, I want to encourage that. I want to find ways that we can also see that taking place. I am going to make a special announcement today that next week on Tuesday at 10 a.m., you are cordially invited to join Sue Choi for a class called Timeless Visions for a Turbulent World. Sue has dove into Hebrew scriptures and really wants to look at how the prophecies of Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, and Daniel all have practical application in our world today. So there's going to be meditation and breath work, and there's going to be ways to open the mind and open the heart to the truths that are concealed in spiritual symbolism. So you'll be able to find information about that on the Unity Windward website. And goodness, what else am I missing? I am just really delighted that we have this experience. I know that 2 or 3 years ago, when we were in the midst of COVID and there was this whole new way of being, there has blossomed, there has flowered this amazing experience that we have to be together. I sure do love physically being with one another. And I will let you know that as far as physically being with one another, I'm going to be in Texas pretty soon at the second week in October. I will be teaching at Unity of Dallas. I'll be teaching Jesus's teachings. I'm excited about seeing a bunch of you. And I'll also be teaching Discerning Your Purpose. So it's going to be big fun. I'll do it over the course of 5 days. And I truly do rejoice in the opportunity for an encounter with any and every one of you. So with all of that, I'll just leave it wide open in the next 3 minutes for anyone who might have anything else.
Do you know of any good ashrams or anything in Texas? Tim?
There are ashrams everywhere.
I just Googled Austin and there's like 10 or 20 of them there. And I live outside of Austin. So I'm going to be visiting a lot of Hindu places in the near future.
Good.
Thank
There's
you.
no shortage, and they all have different.
Yeah, they're all different. Yeah.
They all have different flavors and varieties. Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Tim,
Paula, do
for
you have some?
someone, sorry,
No, go ahead, Carla.
Tim, would you just walk up as a novice who knows nothing? Would you just properly drip, walk up to the gate and say, may I pray? Or what would be protocol to visit?
Right.
Could you say that again, Carla? I missed part of it. I'm sorry.
Oh, just the protocol of visiting for someone outside of their
Oh.
knowingness. Do you just walk up and say, may I pray, may I visit?
Yeah, I think if you want to visit an ashram, want to visit a temple, you can always, find one of the leaders and just introduce yourself and say, I'm here to learn. I just want to experience and know more. And generally, they are very, very, very open to that. And often they might be so so gracious. They may take you on a tour. They may insist on feeding you. It depends on the place. Some places it's like, yeah, just make yourself at home. Other places they may say, here, let us give you some books. Here's some food for you. And some places will give you what's called prasad. Prasad is food that has first been given to God, and then that food is shared with you. So when you're partaking it, it's not only food that you're partaking of, you're embodying that presence. So yeah, it depends on the place. They all have different customs. Don't worry about having to. Typically, if you go in a Hindu temple, you'll need to take, like here in Hawaii, you have to take your shoes off before you enter the temple. Some of them, it depends. Some of them, like in India particularly, you wash your hands and your feet before you go in. But they're used to typically having new people, novices coming in who are just interested. So yeah, I'd encourage that.
Awesome. So Reverend Tim has made reference to the practice of chanting, sometimes known as kirtan. Kirtan is generally a call and response chant. And Sue Choi has suggested that we close with a chant today. I hope that she'd be willing to initiate a call and then a response. I'm going to ask all of us to mute on Zoom because singing together on Zoom is, I'm sure you've experienced it. It doesn't really work, but we can come together in a chant. And what I'll ask for Sue to do is to just give us an opportunity to do that call and response. You're welcome to respond right where you are, and Sue will begin.
I'm happy to do it, Rev Gio, but perhaps Rev Tim would like to do it. Just an invitation.
I'm
No.
open to that, or I'm open to you doing it, Sue. I'm just open.
Okay. Okay, I'll start. This is a chant from the Upanishads. Lead us from darkness to light, from death to immortality. Asatoma Sagamaya Tamasoma Jyotigamaya Mrityorma Amritam Namaya. Om Shanti 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 Om. Many blessings, everyone.
Om Shanti, everyone.
Om Shanti.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much,
Gio.
everyone.
Thank you so much, Reverend
So
Tim.
much.
Thank you,
Thank
Sue.
Aloha, everyone.
Aloha.
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 Thank you, Reverend Gio, Reverend Lytle, and
And
everybody.